Hey Scream, Scooby, and horror fam. Before I get into the bulk of this video, which is going to be ranking my top 5 and bottom 5 scenes of Scream 5, I just wanted to say thank you for the 200 people who have subscribed to my channel, to all of the people who liked and commented on my first video. It means so much to me. I've been in sort of a sad sort of situation thinking about what's going on with TikTok, and I really didn't know where I was going to go with my content and what I was going to do. YouTube seems like the good next place for me, and I'm just so excited to have y'all along for these discussions of Scream topics, horror, and Scooby, and all of that good stuff. So let's get into it. Before I get into my rankings of my favorite and least favorite scenes, Scream 7 news. We really don't have any. I have heard some rumblings that Patrick Dempsey may be confirmed soon, but then again, we've been seeing that now for what feels like the last many weeks and months. So obviously, I'll let you know when we get that official news. But as of now, what's today? It's Tuesday, January 14th. As of today, Patrick Dempsey has not officially signed on, at least as reported on by like reputable outlets like Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and etc. But anyway, let's go. Happy birthday, Scream 5. I cannot believe it has been 3 years. That is insane. It feels like it was just yesterday. But Scream 5 holds a very special, dear place in my heart. It is what really got me into making TikToks about Scream in the first place. I really started with the ramp up to the film, just like making TikToks, talking about Scream history, talking about the marketing and the promotion and the trailers, which, by the way, they gave way too much away in those trailers. We all knew months before the film came out that Dewey was a goner. We knew that they would be at least going to Stu Macher's house. They ruined what should have been a really great pull-out shot, dolly shot of Sam in the doorway, which was in the trailer. So bummed about that, but I was able to rewatch the film today for the first time in quite a bit, and I had a very, very fun time. I do have to say, this film has aged well. I think it has aged far better than Scream 6. I think it is a better movie than Scream 6. It feels more like a Scream film than 6. It has better writing. I think it has... It just feels a lot more like a Scream film than 6. The characters are better and more enjoyable. Mindy is far better. It does have Liv, though. Liv is one of my least favorite characters in the entire franchise. Vince was a wasted character. Something that upset me was that, like, while his death was pretty cool, we should have had more time with him, especially him being a relative to Stu Macher. But what I want to do is I want to give you my top 5 scenes and my bottom 5 scenes, top being my favorite, bottom being least favorite. I have everything written down here. I took extensive notes, and I would love to see what your guys' thoughts are on this and if you agree with me. Why don't we start at the bottom? So I have my hard list, which are 5, and then I also had some, I think, like honorable mentions. But let me just start at number 5, being the 5th worst scene. Or I don't want to say worst because I don't think any of these scenes are truly horrible. They're just not great, and I didn't enjoy them as much as the other ones. So at number 5, I have Chad's whole Ghostface attack sequence outside, which part of why I don't like this, Mason Gooding gives a fine performance, but I have been very vocal about how much I disliked that they did not shoot Scream 5 in California, specifically the scenes at Stu Macher's house, which was filmed near Petaluma, California, out in wine country. I actually got to visit a couple of weeks ago, which was amazing, but it made me so much more upset that they didn't actually film there. And I feel like the stuff with Chad outside, it is just very apparent that they are on a soundstage with fake, like, IKEA-looking plants, and I just don't like it. Plus, he gets stabbed a million times and survives, but this is even worse than Scream 6, so we're definitely going to give it a pass in there. At number 4, I have the Gail and Sydney car scenes. So basically, these filler scenes that we get with Sydney and Gail driving to Stu Macher's house. Sydney basically ignores the retcon that was done with Roman, saying that everything started with Billy Loomis and her, forgetting that it would have been Roman who, you know, started this all. These scenes just feel lazy and like a cheap reminder of the fact that Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell were paid to be in this movie, and I just didn't love that. At number 3 on my worst of list, I have the bar scene where we have Liv, Mindy, Amber, and Chad just having like what feels like a very filler conversation, pointing the finger at each other, saying like, oh, but you could be Ghostface. We're all Ghostface. Whereas like in the first Scream, and people have talked about this a lot, the first 4 movies, it's implied that everyone's a suspect. We know that. You don't have to talk down to the audience. We love Scream. We know what these movies are about. Scream 5 was the beginning of this sort of like talking to us as the viewer to remind us that the characters are all suspects, when we knew that all along. We know going into a Scream movie that that's how it's going to be. So we don't need to be reminded of that. And that's kind of what this scene is. There's a scuffle between them, between Chad and the character of Vince. And then we get Vince's death scene, which I would include as like an outtake from my top 5. I think it's a great scene. I love that Red Right Hand makes another appearance. I would have liked for it to be a bit more, like maybe seeing the shadow of like Ghostface or something on the wall, which I think we got, but it was a deleted scene or something. So yeah, but that bar scene is number 3. And then my number 2 on the bottom is going to be Dewey's death. So I have so many thoughts on this. This could be its own YouTube video. I personally hate hospital scenes in movies, with the exception of, I think, Halloween 2 and the ending of Scream 4, which ending of Scream 4, it has some iconic moments, like the don't fuck with the original line to Jill. But overall, I just like if a horror movie can avoid empty hospitals. It just feels lazy, uninspired. It feels very unreal, and like that would never happen, that a hospital would just be open or like empty like that. And so I always like to avoid hospitals. So I'm kind of disappointed that they had Dewey's life end at a hospital. I also just don't think that he would have gone back like that to shoot Ghostface or Amber in the head. He would have just shot Amber in the head to begin with, or would have not gone back. I didn't feel like it was Dewey. I do like how he gets the call from Gail. That's very sad. But overall, I just, rewatching this, it just feels sort of anticlimactic for a character who's as beloved and as such a cornerstone to the Scream franchise as Dewey, played by David Arquette. The scene didn't age as well for me. I do like when the elevator door opens and Sam, shoots Amber or Ghostface. Like, I think that's fun. But overall, I just don't love the scene. And I was fine, and I appreciate that they had the guts to kill Dewey. I just wish they did it in a better way. It's also made way too obvious that Richie is one of the killers, how he only gets his arm slashed, just like Jill does in Scream 4. I guess you could argue that so does Derek in Scream 2. But just the fact that Richie gets his arm sliced, and like you can see that there's a concerted effort not to make him injured more. And also how he looks back at Amber after she is shot when he's trying to leave. I just feel like if you're a astute Scream watcher like myself, these are things that you picked up on and are part of what made Amber and Richie so obviously our ghost faces. But at number 1 in my bottom scenes, I have the interaction between Liv and Mindy, when Mindy's sitting on the couch and Liv starts just acting so weird and acting as if she's the killer and just being mean to Mindy and whatnot after Chad went outside. The acting is not very good at all, and it just feels so forced and over the top, and like they're making Liv out to be the biggest red herring, and I feel like we all saw through that. I know I did, and I hate this scene. I really do. You know what? I totally forgot one that I meant to put on the bottom. I would put this either tied with Liv and Mindy or even above it at number 1 at being the worst, and that is the scene in the hospital break room with Sam, where she has the hallucination and then runs out to the cop to say that Ghostface is in the break room. I just feel like this is not well acted by Melissa Barrera. I did not buy it. I felt like the scene it was such an underwhelming and just like bland setting for a Ghostface attack. And I just hate it. I don't know what it is about it. I'd be interested to know what you guys think, but from start to finish, I don't like it. I just don't. And again, I just hate the hospital sequences. I hope we don't get any in Scream 7, even though I know it's very likely we are going to get at least one based on some reporting slash speculation that's been out there. Okay, and now my top 5 favorite scenes. Also, you guys, I need a tripod ASAP because my arm and hand are getting so tired from holding this, but I have to do it until the tripod comes. Anyway, okay, so at number 5, this was tough. I actually really like the scene with Amber and Mindy in the basement as a callback to the, iconic scene in the first Scream with Tatum in the garage. But I hate how they made it a basement instead of a garage, circling back to how upset I am that they didn't just film at the Stumacher house from the original. I do like that scene. I was going to put it at 5, but I think instead I'm going to put Dewey's phone call to Sidney when he's in his trailer at number 5, just because I love that introduction of Sidney Prescott. I love that we get to learn that she is married to Mark and has girls. It's a pretty grand intro back to Sidney Prescott. I also love the "I'm Sidney fucking Prescott, of course I have a gun" line that she improvised the F word part of that, which was great because she thought it was a very Sidney Prescott thing to say, and I completely agree. But I also love when Dewey is like texting Gail and he's like, "I shouldn't have put the smiley face." It's just, I remember the audience laughing at that, and it was just such a sweet Dewey-like moment. Everything in the trailer, really, him watching the morning show with Gail and the bangs joke, I just love that all so much. Anyway, so yeah, that's number 5. At number 4, I have the Wes and Judy sequence, which I think is just from start to finish magnificently done. It made me upset that we didn't get even more time with Wes and Judy because I felt like they played off the mother and son dynamic so well. Marley Shelton and Dylan Mignette were just so fantastic in these roles. It killed me that we didn't get to see them more in 6, but I loved their death sequences. It's amazing when she's in the cop car and she's like, "I prefer musicals." It's just so good. And then the Ghostface call is so mean. He's like, "I'm gonna gut your baby boy," and she turns on those sirens and just rolls back to the house. The one thing though is we all know that Sheriff Judy Hicks would have had that gun out and wouldn't have just run into the house unarmed. But I guess she was going after her, she was going to save her son, and the motherly instinct kicked in. So I might be able to forgive it, maybe. And it is cool how that killing happens out in broad daylight. I like that we get one of the few sort of wide shots of the house and neighborhood showing that she is really being killed in broad daylight. I think that that's just really cool. And this sequence is one that when I first saw the film, I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite. I loved the Psycho reference with the shower and all of that. And then I think that we go a bit overly long with the fake out jump scares with Wes's character. But the knife through the neck is very cool, and the effects look good there. But yeah, just a very memorable, heart-racing sequence of events with Judy and Wes. And it's also so sad how he's setting the table for them and their sushi. I love them. At number 3, I have Gail and Dewey's reunion outside of Judy and Wes's house. This part is absolutely heartbreaking, but one of my favorite moments from the film when we get to see Gail and Dewey back together, even if just for a little bit. We basically get walked through what has happened to Gail and Dewey and their relationship, and how Dewey went back to Woodsboro while Gail stayed in New York City pursuing her career in journalism. And it's just truly heartbreaking because Dewey mentions how he watches her every morning and how it's such a bright spot in his day. And Gail is basically like, "Dewey, why you're telling me all of this, but why didn't you tell me it sooner? It could have mattered." And it's just so sad because, well, you know what ends up happening. And this is one of the moments during the film that really feels like Scream. It has the vibes of the early trilogy, and it's just like Gail and Dewey are back together like no time has passed at all. I absolutely love it, and it makes me tear up whenever I watch it, and it did today too. At number 2, I have Gail and Sidney's reunion at Woodsboro Hospital, one of the few hospital sequences that I can actually love because it is Gail and Sidney reuniting. And this also includes Gail finding out that it is Dewey who is under the sheet or the coroner's bag, which is just heartbreaking to know that she just saw him and that was the last time that they were ever going to see each other. And it's even more heartbreaking in this scene because we know that Sydney and Dewey didn't get to see each other in person. That phone call was the last time that they ever heard each other's voices, and they didn't get to see each other, which breaks my heart, and I wish that they would have had time together in the 5th installment. But I love this scene at the hospital. It is raw with Gail's emotions. It's real, and I'm also including the part where Gail and Sydney are talking to Sam outside, because I just think it's so great how Gail stands up for Sydney, and she's like, this is the original. And also how Sydney puts the tracker on Richie's car and is like, I thought it was a very Gale Weathers thing to do. I just love that. I would have taken even more time with them on screen together. But yeah, that's my number 2. But my top number 1 spot, it is the entirety of that 3rd act, baby. Right from where we get the Amber shooting Liv, which we all knew that Amber and Richie were going to be the killers, but just the jump and like shock factor of that scene of Liv being like, I'm not the fucking killer, and then Amber just going, I know, like gagged, whole audience gagged. I loved it, love it to this day. And then everything in that 3rd act, like Richie's reveal, I think is great with the stab to Sam. The hand sanitizer and all of the craziness in the kitchen with Gail, Sydney, and Amber is just iconic. And yes, it's over the top, but it is camp. It is done so well. I love that Gail gets the final shots of Amber. Well, I guess Tara kind of gets it, but you know what I'm talking about. And then the hand sanitizer and her lighting on fire. And it's just so incredible. Some of the dialogue here is so strong. And the motive is so prescient, like toxic fandom. And Amber being like, I was radicalized. They're so mean on the message boards. Like watching that killed me because it's just so accurate and true. And I feel like that is how like that really our generation like would respond to things, just so ridiculous and over the top. And I just love it. And I love that like Gail is finishing Amber off for Dewey. It's just so special. And, you know, they're in that same kitchen that Sydney was in the original Scream. Well, not really the same kitchen because they didn't film at the OG house, but you know what I mean. But anyway, that whole 3rd act, I absolutely loved it, has aged and is really just better in, I think, every regard than the 3rd act of Scream 6. And this is something that I tweeted about, but it's really interesting to me how even though I find Amber and Richie to be more predictable than Detective Bailey, Quinn, Ethan from Scream 6, I just find their characters to be better, more believable. And, you know, some of the dialogue is a little bit iffy in the 3rd act, like when Amber's calling Richie Hun, it's a little bit unbelievable. And some of the stuff is over the top, but I think it's the same way that Scream 4's motive has aged so well with wanting to be like a celebrity and for the fame. It's just like toxic fandom and, you know, being radicalized and all of that. It is very just prescient. And even though it is hammy and corny and like a little definitely campy, it just fits and it works and it feels more inspired than just doing the Scream 2, Mrs. Loomis again. So just to recap, my bottom 5, number 5, Chad outside. Number 4, Gail and Sydney's scenes in the car. Number 3, the bar sequence. Number 2, Dewey's death. Number 1, Liv, Mindy, and Chad. And also possibly number 1 is Sam in the break room and the exchange with the cop. And then for my top 5, I have at number 5, Sydney and Dewey's phone call. At number 4, I have Wes and Judy's death sequence. Number 3, Gail and Dewey. Number 2, I have Gail and Sydney meeting up, reuniting in the hospital. And then at number 1, I have the end of Act 3. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is I also don't think that the Tara, the Babadook stuff has aged particularly well, or like the elevated horror. Oh my God, I can't talk. I'm tired. But yeah, some of the dialogue like in the beginning with Jenna Ortega as Tara. Some of the dialogue is just not great. And now that I think about it, I don't think I put her opening in my top 5, which I know might be kind of crazy to some people. But although I really like Tara in the opening, and I think that there are some parts of it that feel fresh and original, like all of the referencing of the stab trivia and whatnot. It does just very much feel like a rehashing of things that we've already seen. And like the locks and stuff with the app, that's fine, that's cool. But like the fact that we're still using a landline in that movie, and even in Scream 6, and the fact that we don't get any really like exterior shots except for the very, very beginning. We don't get a chase scene really or anything, and it's pretty predictable that Ghostface is going to come out from the, dark doorway beside Tara. There's just something about it that doesn't feel that fresh, and I almost just wanted to skip through it, even though I like it a lot for Jenna Ortega's performance, because she really takes just some sort of basic script and dialogue and staging and makes it into something that's memorable. Also, it's brutal with her hand, and I think her like leg being like broken or stepped on or whatever. That was kind of brutal and memorable. But overall, like, not one of my favorite openings. I'll do an opening ranking down the line, and we'll see where that one ends up. But obviously it was fresh that she survived. But then again, from the trailer, we knew that was going to happen, because I think we saw a glimpse of like the wheelchair and her hand in it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this here. I hope you guys enjoyed this YouTube video. I gotta remember what I'm doing here. YouTube video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you will follow for more. I'll keep you updated with all of the Scream news, and like, comment, subscribe. Love you all.